Welcome to our deep dive into Vishal Mega Mart's updated draft Red Herring Prospectus. It's for their IPO. Now, I know these documents can be intimidating, but this one is a goldmine. It's full of information about their strategy, and it even gives us some insights into the Indian retail scene as a whole.
You're absolutely right. It's like a sneak peek behind the curtain of a major player in a market that's growing really fast.
Okay, so let's just start with the company, Vishal Mega Mart. What's their story? What makes them tick?
Well, they're a powerhouse in Indian retail with over 600 stores
Yeah.
across the country. They focus on apparel, general merchandise, fast-moving consumer goods. But what's really interesting is their emphasis on own brands.
Known brands. That sounds a little bit like what Costco does in the U.S. with their Kirkland signature brand. Are they going for that same kind of loyal following?
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
But remember, this is India, not the U.S. The challenges are unique, and the opportunities are unique. Vishal Mega Mart's own brands are very carefully crafted to appeal to a specific customer, the aspirational but budget-conscious Indian shopper.
Okay, that makes sense. They're offering a step up in quality from the unorganized retail sector, but without the premium prices of the high-end stores. But how are they differentiating themselves with so much competition in the Indian retail landscape?
That's where their growth strategy comes in. They're really focused on expanding their footprint,
Yeah.
especially in what they call Tier 2 cities. Think of them as smaller,
Yeah.
up-and-coming urban areas in India that are experiencing rapid growth.
So they're bringing that big city shopping experience to smaller towns. That's clever, considering the rising incomes and the changing consumer preferences in those areas. But with online giants like Amazon India and Flipkart already dominating e-commerce, how can Vishal Mega Mart compete with that?
Well, they're not trying to be the next Amazon. They're leveraging their existing assets, their network of physical stores, to offer what we call a hyper-local online experience.
Hyperlocal online, what's that all about? Is it kind of like what Target's been doing
Yeah.
in the U.S. with their same-day delivery and their in-store pickup options?
Exactly. It's all about convenience and providing a seamless experience across all channels. So customers can order online, and then they can pick up their purchases at a Vishal Mega Mart store that's nearby, often the same day.
Okay, so they're blending the online world with the offline world. That's a smart way to cater to consumers who want the best of both worlds. But isn't that a logistical nightmare? How can they manage that efficiently?
That's where their investment in a tech-enabled supply chain comes into play. They're using technology to optimize every step of the process, from getting goods from vendors to getting those goods on store shelves and into the hands of customers.
So it's not just about having a fancy website. It's about having the back-end systems
Yeah.
to handle all the complexity of omni-channel retail.
Precisely. They're using data analytics to forecast demand, manage inventory, optimize warehouse operations, and even track deliveries in real time.
So they're turning data into a competitive weapon.
Absolutely. It's about being agile and responsive in a market that's always changing. Think of it like a well-oiled machine, driven by technology and data.
Now, this all sounds impressive, but it can't be all smooth sailing, right? Every business has its challenges. What's this prospectus telling us about the headwinds Vishal Mega Mart might encounter?
One thing that jumps out is they rely on a single supplier for a pretty big chunk of their products. That might offer some cost advantages, but it also creates a vulnerability. What if there's a disruption with that supplier?
That's a great point. It's a classic risk-reward trade-off. They're betting big on this one supplier. If it backfires, it could have a domino effect
Right.
on their entire operation.
Right, and we're talking about a company that operates in a complex environment, a dynamic environment. The Indian retail landscape is incredibly fragmented. Lots of small players still have a big market share.
So they're not just fighting the big boys, they're also facing competition
Yeah.
from tons of smaller local businesses. That's got to be constant pressure.
Absolutely. And don't forget about the threat of quick commerce. Those are the companies that promise super fast delivery, groceries and other essentials, within hours or even minutes.
Oh yeah, those guys. They're everywhere now. They're really capitalizing on that need for instant gratification. It's hard enough competing with supermarkets, let alone these speedy delivery startups.
Exactly. And consumer expectations are rising for convenience, for speed. Vishal Mega Mart needs to stay ahead of the curve, or they'll be left behind.
Okay, so we've got competition, a fragmented market, the threat of quick commerce. What else should we be looking at?
Well, there's another factor that people often overlook, but it can have a big impact: the legal and regulatory environment.
Ah, yes, the red tape. No business can escape that, right? And especially in a market as big and complex as India. What kind of regulatory hurdles is Vishal Mega Mart facing?
The prospectus mentions a range of issues: food safety regulations, employee benefits, environmental compliance. These are all critical areas. They can affect a company's bottom line and its
Yeah.
reputation.
So it's not just about selling products, it's about navigating a whole web of rules and regulations. That's got to be a headache. For a company with over 600 stores and thousands of employees.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity, and it's something investors should look at closely. Any missteps in this area could lead to fines, penalties, even damage to the brand.
Okay, so we've got competition, fragmentation, quick commerce, regulatory hurdles. Is there any good news in this prospectus? Any bright spots that suggest they might actually overcome all these challenges?
Absolutely. The prospectus actually paints a very optimistic picture of the Indian retail market as a whole. It cites a report from Redseer, that's a market research firm, and they highlight the rapid growth of organized retail in India.
That's encouraging. What's driving that growth? Is it just the rising incomes, the urbanization we talked about, or are there other factors?
Those are definitely key drivers. But the report also points to a fascinating phenomenon: the rise of what they call the aspirational retail segment.
Aspirational retail, what does that even mean? Is it just a fancy way of saying that people want to buy fancy things?
Not exactly. It's more nuanced than that. It's about consumers who want quality products and experiences at prices they can afford.
So it's not about luxury brands or high prices, it's about wanting the best possible value for your money.
You got it. And that's where Vishal Mega Mart's strategy really shines. They're in a perfect position to cater to this consumer who's aspirational but value conscious.
I see. So they're offering a step up from the traditional unorganized retail experience, but without the premium price tag of the high-end stores.
Precisely. It's a sweet spot in the market. And the Red Sea report says that this segment has enormous growth potential.
Okay, that's a promising sign. But can they actually turn that market potential into financial success?
Let's take a look at their financial performance and see what the numbers tell us.
Sounds like a plan. Lead the way.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk numbers. What's the financial picture like for Vishal Mega Mart?
Well, the prospectus highlights the revenue growth.
Yeah.
It's been pretty impressive. They've had double-digit growth for the past 3 years.
Double-digit growth. That's not bad at all. But I'm also curious about their same-store sales growth. That's a key metric for retailers.
Right.
It tells us how well their existing stores are performing, regardless of any new store openings.
You're right. Same-store sales growth is really important, and Vishal Mega Mart's numbers are pretty strong in this area. They've consistently done better than the industry average, which suggests that they're not just relying on new stores to drive growth.
So it seems like their strategy is working. The focus on own brands, the tech-enabled supply chain, catering to the aspirational consumer. But are they actually making any money? What about their profitability?
Well, their profit margin has been consistently healthy. It's been around 5%, which is actually quite good for the retail industry, especially considering their focus on affordability.
That's a relief. I was a little worried that their focus on low prices might be hurting their margins, but it seems like they found a good balance. They can offer competitive prices and still maintain a healthy profit.
Exactly. They're managing costs effectively, and they're pricing their products strategically. But as with any investment, you have to look at the risks. And this document does a good job of outlining those potential downsides.
Okay, let's not sugarcoat it. What are some of those red flags that investors should be aware of?
Well, one thing that stands out is their reliance on that single supplier for a big chunk of their products.
Wait, they only have one supplier? That sounds risky. What if something happens to that supplier? A natural disaster, a labor strike, even just a change in management could be a problem. It could disrupt everything.
You're absolutely right. It's a strategic decision they made, maybe to get good pricing or to maintain quality control. But it definitely has some risks. If something goes wrong with that supplier, it could disrupt their whole supply chain, leading to shortages, delays, maybe even damage to their brand.
I see what you mean. So the single supplier thing might be working now, but it's something investors should really look into. What other risks should we be thinking about?
Well, the document also says that they've had some problems with complying with labor laws in the past, specifically allegations of wage violations and not so great working conditions. and some of their factories.
Oh, that's not good. Have they done anything to fix that? Because these days, consumers care about that kind of stuff. Any bad publicity could really hurt their brand.
Well, they say that they've put in place stricter monitoring and enforcement mechanisms. But it's something investors should definitely investigate further. The social impact of a company's operations is becoming more and more important to consumers and investors.
Absolutely. So we've got the high growth, healthy profits, reliance on a single supplier, and those past labor issues. What else?
Well, the document also talks about the competition. In the Indian retail market, it's super fragmented, lots of small players operating in the unorganized sector, and they still have a pretty big market share.
Right, we talked about that before. So even though organized retail is growing fast, they're still competing with those small shops. Street vendors.
Exactly. It's a challenging environment. But it also presents a huge opportunity if they can consolidate the market, attract customers away from those unorganized businesses. Their potential for growth is really big.
Okay, this is starting to sound like a game of chess. But let's shift gears a bit and focus on the IPO itself. What are the key terms of the offering?
Well, they're hoping to raise quite a bit of capital with this IPO. Over $50 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of money. What are they going to do with all that?
Their plans for using those funds are in the prospectus. First, they want to invest a lot in expanding their store network, especially in those Tier 2 cities and beyond.
So more of that cluster-based expansion, targeting areas with less competition.
Exactly. They see a lot of potential in those markets. And second, they're planning to invest in upgrading their tech. Things like improving their supply chain, their online platform, developing new ways to analyze data.
It sounds like they're really doubling down on their technology, which makes sense, considering how important data is these days in retail. Is there anything else on their wish list?
Yeah, they also want to invest in their own brands. They want to come up with new products, improve quality, do more brand marketing. They're aiming to become a national brand with a really strong reputation for quality and value.
So they're not just expanding, they're also deepening their offerings and their brand identity. That's smart if they want to stay ahead of the competition.
You got it. But with any IPO, there's no guarantee you'll get a return on your investment. There's always risk.
Of course, that's how it works. But what are the potential rewards for investors who believe in Vishal Mega Mart?
Well, the prospectus highlights a few potential upsides. First, like we've said, the Indian retail market is growing like crazy. And Vishal Mega Mart is in a good spot to take advantage of that.
They're in the right place at the right time.
You could say that.
No.
Second, they've got a business model that works and a history of making money.
That's always good to see. What else?
Third, they have a clear plan for growth, and they've explained how they'll use the money from the IPO to make it happen. They have a roadmap for success, at least on paper.
Right. It all comes down to execution. Can they deliver on what they're promising?
Exactly. And that's where things get interesting. For investors, they have to decide. Weigh the potential rewards against the risks and make their own decisions.
So no easy answers here. It's buyer beware. But this has definitely given me a lot to think about.
That's what we're hoping for. We've covered a lot of ground. The company's history, their strategy, the dynamics of the Indian retail market.
You've explored both sides, the good and the bad, the potential and the risks of this IPO.
Exactly. Now it's up to you, the listener, to decide if this is a story you want to be a part of.
But before we leave it to our listeners, I think it's important to remember that businesses are about people. We've talked about the company, the market, the financials, even the risks. But what about the people? Who are the people behind Vishal Mega Mart?
Ah, yes. The human element. That's always crucial in any business, especially one that deals with people as much as retail.
Exactly. So who are the players? Who's running the show?
Well, the prospectus highlights the leadership team, the managing director and CEO, Gunender Kapoor. He's been with the company for over 10 years, and he's been really important to their growth and transformation.
He's the captain at the helm.
Exactly. He's known for his strategic vision, his operational expertise, and his understanding of the Indian consumer.
He sounds like a good leader. Who else is on the team?
Well, there's Amit Gupta. He's the chief financial officer. He's in charge of the company's financials, their capital structure, and making sure they follow all the regulations.
So he's the numbers guy, making sure everything adds up and keeping the investors happy.
You got it. He has a background in finance and accounting, and he's known for his analytical skills and his attention to detail. The prospectus also talks about other important executives: the chief operating officer, the chief marketing officer, the chief technology officer.
So they've got a full lineup.
They do. They put together a team with diverse expertise and experience, which is really important for navigating the retail world today.
But even the best teams need guidance. What about their board of directors? Who's keeping an eye on things, making sure everyone stays on track?
Well, the board is made up of a mix of independent directors and representatives from the company's big shareholders.
Okay, that's pretty standard. For a public company, what about their backgrounds, their qualifications? Are they just there to agree with everything, or do they have the experience to challenge management if they need to?
Well, the prospectus has a bio for each board member. It highlights their experience in areas like finance, retail, law, corporate governance. They seem to be a diverse group with the knowledge and skills to do their job effectively.
That's good to hear, because even the best plans can fail if there isn't good governance.
Absolutely. Investors should always pay attention to the board of directors. It's really important for the long-term health of the company.
Okay, so we've covered the management team, the board of directors. Is there anything else we need to know about the people behind Vishal Mega Mart?
Yes, one more important group, the employees.
Right. The folks working in the stores, interacting with the customers, they're the face of the company. Their attitude, their performance, it all affects the customer experience.
Exactly. And the prospectus says that Vishal Mega Mart has over 15,000 employees across their stores, warehouses, and corporate offices.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yep.
What does the document say about their workforce? Are they investing in them, providing opportunities to learn and grow?
Well, the prospectus highlights their commitment to employee training, development. They talk about creating a positive work environment and offering competitive wages and benefits.
So they're trying to be a good place to work.
It seems like it, and that's important for a few reasons.
Okay, I'm listening. Why should investors care about how a company treats its employees?
Well, first of all, employees who are happy and engaged, they tend to provide better customer service. And that's huge in retail.
Right, a friendly face can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And second, when you have a good reputation as an employer, it helps you attract good people, keep the ones you have. And that's essential for long-term success.
So it's not just about being nice, it's good for the bottom line.
Exactly. And third, in today's world, consumers care about social issues. They're more likely to support businesses that treat their employees right and operate ethically.
So being a good employer is good for your brand image.
Precisely. It's all connected.
Okay, this deep dive has been really helpful. I feel like I have a much better understanding of Vishal Mega Mart. We've looked at their business model, their strategy, their finances, the competition, regulations, the risks, the opportunities, and even the people.
That's what we like about deep dives. You get to connect the dots, see the big picture.
I'm feeling a lot more informed, but I have to admit it's a lot to take in.
That's understandable. IPO prospectuses are packed with information.
So how can we help our listeners make sense of it all?
One way is to think about the key takeaways, the big insights.
Okay, let's do that. What are the 3 most important things for our listeners to remember about Vishal Mega Mart?
First, they're a leader in the Indian retail market, which is growing rapidly. They're focused on the aspirational consumer. That's a segment with huge potential for growth.
A big market with lots of room to grow.
Right. Second, they have a business model that works. They're profitable. They have a plan for growth. They're not just a fad. They're the real deal.
Okay.
And third, they're investing in technology, developing their own brands, building a strong team. They're setting themselves up for success in the long term.
But like you said, there's no such thing as a risk-free investment, and this IPO is no different.
That's true. We talked about the supplier issue, the labor issues, the competition. Investors need to think carefully about those things.
Absolutely. Vishal Mega Mart has a lot going for it, but investors have to weigh the pros and cons before they make any decisions.
Exactly.
Okay, we've boiled down this document into 3 key takeaways. But is there anything else we can offer our listener to help them navigate this IPO? I can imagine them listening to all this, maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed. How can we make this information more actionable?
We can give them some questions to think about as they do their own research.
Okay, I like that. Hit me with those questions.
The first one is, how sustainable is their advantage? Can they keep their prices low and their quality high with all the competition and rising costs?
That's a good question, because if they can't keep their prices low, their whole value proposition disappears.
Right. The second question is, how well can they manage their supply chain? Especially with just one supplier. What are they doing to reduce the risk of disruptions?
That's important because any problems with their supply chain could really hurt them.
Yeah. And third, how serious are they about fixing those labor problems? What are they doing to make sure working conditions are fair and ethical throughout their entire supply chain?
That's a big one because, like we said, their reputation as an employer matters. It can affect their brand.
For sure. And the last question is, how realistic are their plans for growth? Can they actually pull off this expansion and stay profitable, especially with all the competition in the Indian market?
Those are tough questions, but they're the right questions.
Absolutely. Investing is all about asking the right questions and doing your homework.
Okay, so our listeners now have the key takeaways, the tough questions, and hopefully a better understanding of Vishal Mega Mart and this IPO.
That's the goal. We've given them the tools and the insights to make informed decisions.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. We don't tell you what to think. We help you think for yourself.
We're guides, not gurus.
You know, something caught my eye when I was going through this prospectus. It's a small detail, but it really speaks to the bigger trends we're seeing in the Indian economy.
Oh, I'm curious. Tell me more.
Well, it says that Vishal Mega Mart is seeing a big increase in demand for electronics, especially smartphones and laptops.
That's interesting. It makes sense, though, with incomes rising and more people using technology in India.
Exactly. More people are joining the middle class, and they want the same gadgets, the same conveniences as people in other parts of the world.
And Vishal Mega Mart is in a good position to meet that demand. They focus on affordable prices. And they have stores all over India. It's just one small detail. But it tells a bigger story about India and the opportunities that are out there.
It reminds us that even within one company's story, we can see those bigger trends, economic trends, societal trends. That's what makes business so fascinating. It's not just about numbers. It's about people and products and the things that shape our world.
I totally agree.
Okay, I think we've gotten everything we can out of this prospectus.
Yeah, we've really explored every aspect of Vishal Mega Mart's story.
Now it's up to our listeners to decide if they want to be a part of it.
And as always, we encourage them to do their research, ask the tough questions, and make their own decisions.
That's the best advice we can give.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive into Vishal Mega Mart and the worlds of Indian retail. But before we go, we wanted to leave you with one final thought.
So you're saying something about a final thought. Before we go, what is it? What's the big takeaway?
Well, this whole deep dive into Vishal Mega Mart's IPO, it's not just about one company. It's about something bigger that's happening in India.
You mean the growth of the Indian economy, the rising middle class, the changes in retail?
Exactly. Vishal Mega Mart is like a small example of those bigger forces. Their success depends on understanding the Indian consumer, their needs, their aspirations, and meeting those needs.
It's like a case study in how businesses have to adapt to survive in a changing market.
That's a good way to put it. And it's not just retail. We're seeing this in other industries too. Healthcare, education, financial services.
So it's about recognizing those rising expectations of a new generation and finding new ways to meet those expectations.
Right. And it's about understanding the Indian market. It's unique, the culture, the regulations, the competition.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What can they learn from all this?
This IPO, in Vishal Mega Mart's story, they give us insights into the opportunities and the challenges of doing business in India. Things like understanding consumers, embracing technology, navigating the regulations.
It's like a roadmap for anyone who wants to invest in India or do business there.
You could say that. And it shows that India is not just one big market. There are differences between regions, income levels, cultural preferences.
So what works in one place might not work somewhere else. Companies need to be flexible and understand the local context.
Absolutely. It's about finding a balance between global best practices and local sensitivities.
It's a complex market with risks and rewards.
And that's what makes it so interesting. India's economy is changing fast. And companies like Vishal Mega Mart, they're part of that story.
This has been an amazing journey, exploring this IPO and what it tells us about Indian retail. I've learned a lot.
Me too. It shows you what deep dives can do. You can take complex information and find the real insights and connect them to bigger trends.
And that's exactly what we did today. We went beyond the surface, looked at the details, and came away with a better understanding of a specific company and the market forces that are shaping its future.
And hopefully our listeners got something out of it, something they can use in their own investments or their businesses.
That's what we're all about, giving our listeners knowledge, insights, and a sense of curiosity about the world around them.
We want to inspire people, not just inform them.
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of Vishal Mega Mart and the Indian retail market.
Thanks for being with us on this journey of discovery.
We'll see you on the next deep dive. We'll be exploring another part of the business world and uncovering the hidden stories in the data.